Alright, welcome to another tutorial from Homs, and we are in Inkscape right now, and we're doing the second part of the pool animation, which I've termed the swim animation, and that's where we see the person swimming, the woman or the lady in front of me swimming. So we're in Inkscape. I'm not going to go through the actual design of the elements because this is quite long, but I have done instead is that I've separated the elements to show you what they look like and what you need to consider when importing these into Grease Pencil. So I'll have this up on the screen as well. This is what the final image looks like on the left, and these are the separate elements, and you'll see that on the screen right about now. The head will be its own separate Grease Pencil object. It will have layers, which is the hair piece, which is the piece of hair on the top, the general facial features that includes the eyebrows and the nose. You'll have the eyes as separate as a separate layer. You'll have the ears as a separate layer, and you'll have the mouth as a separate layer. Then we move on to the hair. There will be a separate Grease Pencil object as well, and the hair will be acted upon by a Lattice to get the animation. So you want to separate the hair as well. The bones will be for the rig will be added onto the arms both left to right, and the legs both left and right, and the torso will be separated into two layers, which is just this torso here, which is these arm pieces here, and the armpits. So when the arms stretch up, we can use a lattice on the armpits here to fill in any gap that shows up from the rotation of the arm. So this is the setup here, and I'll also provide a link in the description if you want to download this setup image. Alright, that makes for the first step of the swim animation, and now we're going to move on to the second step, which is where we're going to be talking about the setting up of the bones. Alright, we're going to be moving on to the bones right now. So we have the leg and the arm bone. We're not going to do We're going to do these two because we can always just flip them when we're finished. So what we're going to do first is add a bone. I'm going to start with our arm here. So we're just going to go Shift and A. You can also go to add at the top while in object mode. And what you want to go to is armature and single bone. It shows up at the top here. Now because of my orientation, the bone is pointing directly to me, so I have to hit RX and 90. We want this bone to be going down from shoulder to the top, and then I'm going to use my directional shortcuts. That's G, Y, G, X, and G, Z to position the bone where I want it to. You know, I think for these type of applications, using directional shortcuts is best. Then we're going to press tab to go to edit mode. We're going to grab this ball point here, and we're just going to maneuver the bone until we have it in the position that we want it to. Then we're going to press E to extrude. We're going to extrude it 3 times, and we're going to manipulate these ball points so that we have the orientation and the scale and the relation to each other set so that the bones do what we want it to do. We want the middle bone joint to be around where the elbow would be, somewhere like this. Cool. And then we're going to do the same for the leg here. We're going to go to armature, add single bone. Let me just put a cursor here so that we can get it. Single bone. I'm going to go RX 90. That's to rotate on the by 90 degrees on the x-axis, and then we're going to use GX and GZ and GY if necessary to position the bone. Good. That looks okay. You can always come out of camera mode to position the bone. And we're going to do just about the same thing that we did for the arm. I'm just going to extend it here. and extend it down here too. Cool. Once we get an orientation, once we get a position of the bones in, you know, how we want it to look. This one's a bit high, let's bring this down a bit. Yeah, once we get the position how we want it to look, then we can parent our bones to the target object. So for the arm, I'm going to select the target of the bone deformation and the bones as the last selection while holding shift, and we're going to hit Control and P. You'll know you've done the correct thing if the bones are in the lighter color of orange. You can see the highlight there. I'm going to hit Control and P for parent. I'm going to select armature deform with empty groups. So what this does is that it provides a different vertex group for each one of the bones. And if we go to our the target of our bone deformation and go, which is our grease pencil object, go to data and look at vertex group, we see that we have the bones listed here. It's always good to name these bones so that you know what's doing what, but because we only have a few bones here, it's kind of, we know what these bones are. We know that the first one is the shoulder, the second one is the forearm, and the last one is the hand. And we're going to do the same for the leg here. We're going to select the target for the bone deformation. Then we're going to select the bones. We're going to hit Control and P, and we're going to deform the armature with empty groups again. Good. So this sets up for us to do our weight painting now, because we're going to paint on those vertex groups, and that's what's going to tell Blender what bone controls where. So first thing is that to do the vertex group, we're going to select the target here, and then we're going to go to weight paint. Then we're going to shift. Oh, sorry. First, before you do that, you have to select the bone, then select the target here, and then we're going to go to weight paint, and then you can shift click the bone that you want to initiate the weight painting for. So when we go into weight painting mode, you're going to be greeted with some options at the top. Basically, how Blender does weight painting is 1 is full control, where 0 is no control. So Blender donates the variance between those two controls, between 1 and 0, as a gradient from red to blue. So red being full weight, meaning the bone controls has absolute control, and blue being no weight, being the bone has no control. Good. By default, the bones have no control. Right, so we have to paint in the control, and any color in between these two colors is a variance between the 1 and 0. So basically, you want to just color where this bone's going to control, and then we're going to shift click again, and that will give us, or just regular click, sorry, and that will give us the second bone, and we want the bone to control this area. So we're just going to use this brush. The strength of the brush just talks about how hard you have to press, or rather how absolute the color distribution is. So if you don't want the colors to be absolutely red, if you want a gradient or a smoother gradient, then we reduce the strength of this. But for now, we kind of just want the bones just to be colored so that we can see what's going on. Cool. Alright, so right now we've done the weight paint for all of the bones here, so we can see each bone has its appropriate weight, and we're going to see how this looks. So what we can do now is go to object mode, then go to pose. Good. And we're going to move this bone and see how it interacts, and we can see that we do indeed get some movement. We have some artifacting there, but we can fix that in the corrective animation, but we can see that the bones do indeed control what they need to control. Awesome. So for the next step, I'm going to do the exact same thing for the leg. we're going to go to object mode, and we're going to select the bone first, and then the target of the bone deformation. We're going to go to weight paint, and then we're going to select the bone that we want. Good. Then we're just going to paint it in with this brush here. Good. Good. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to select this next bone, paint it in. When you're painting your bone, try your best not to have different areas of be controlled by the same, not have two bones have two interactions with red, as the two bones will interfere with the joint, and that will produce artifacts. So you want to be careful of that. Right? Make sure that when you're painting that you don't have much overlap, or you have a smooth gradient, so it's not as bad. I'm quickly moving through this, but you have more time to focus. And then we're going to go to object mode, and we're going to go to pose mode, which is where we're going to do most of our animation. And we can see that we have mobility here. Okay. Alright, you can always go back to the weight paint mode when things like this happen, and you can see what's going on in the corrective animation. So we're just gonna select the bones in object mode, and then select this, go to weight paint, and we can see this section is not being controlled by, so we're just gonna select it, and we see that it goes back. So you're gonna have to go back and forth to do some nuance changes, and but this is how we go about the weight paint and the bones. In the next section, we're going to be looking at the lattice modifier and shape keys. Alright, so we're in the third section, which is lattices and shape keys. So we have our body parts that we had done prior. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and add the other parts to it to make it a bit more complete. We're going to add the torso. So let me just carry this in, just duplicate this, X, cool, and then we're just going to delete these, go to edit mode and just delete what we do not want. That includes everything that picks off the neck, points, and just leave these two for torso parts. Then we're just going to move it across. We already aligned our body parts to be in the position that we want them to. Cool, and that will amount to this. We do want the hands to be in front though, or in front or behind. No, I think this is where we want them to be behind. Just lift them up slightly. Cool, something to this effect. Alright, so then we're going to go over to our data node for the grease pencil object. We're going to do some layering. So you want to make sure you're in layers. We're going to add 2 layers, and we're going to name them. The first one is going to be armpit, and the second one is torso. Cool, armpit and torso. And then what we're going to do is we're going to select the part that we want in torso and select the part that we want in armpit. So we're going to select this and move this to armpit. Cool. And then we have torso and armpit. Then we want to disable use lights, and let me just go to Z outline mode for a bit. Wireframe. Okay, it's there. Z, go back to material view. Cool, so we have this now, and we want to first move into the lattice control. Oh, this is where it is. Move it down a bit and just move the keyframes. If at all you're missing your grease pencil, it's always good to kind of check your timeline first to see where the grease pencil appears in the keyframes. Yeah, that can happen a lot when using grease pencil, because it will appear on the keyframe that you have your timeline on. Your timeline indicator, this blue line here on. Okay, so we've done that now, and we want to go ahead and add our head and our here. So let's go ahead and drag these in. Also, I couldn't notice in the last, I didn't mention in the last step that you can add sections to the bones if you're getting unwanted creases. So I was getting creases for the foot. You can add sections, so you can go to your bones and add sections here, and this typically helps out to smooth out creases, but it's not applicable in all scenarios, like a knee, because it will make the knee unusually bendy while removing the crease behind the foot in the back of the knee. But we can talk about that in corrective animation. Alright, so we have the here, and the first lattice we're going to add now is to the here. So let's go ahead and create a lattice, and to do that we're going to hit Shift and A, and then we're going to go to lattice. Where do we keep lattice again? Usually it's right here. Right, lattice right here. Let's move this up. GY. And we're gonna extend it along the x-axis and make it as wide as and as tall as I here. And SY. And scale it along the y-axis as well, so it covers the here. Then we're going to subdivide this lattice by U and V. Cool. And this looks about enough subdivisions. If we need more, we can add more, just like so. Cool. And then with this lattice select is done now, we're going to move on to the here, and we're going to go to the panel on our right hand side, and we're looking for our modifiers, which is this wrench right here. And then we're going to go ahead and add a lattice modifier. We're going to select the object that's going to be modified, and also the object that's, or the lattice that's going to do the modification. Cool. And then now we have our lattice controlling the here. So we want a section where we want to be able to animate this, and to do that we have to go into the shape keys for the lattice itself. So I'm going to navigate to the lattice object. I'm going to go down to the bottom here and enter in shape keys, and then we're going to add two shape keys, and with the two shape keys selected, we can begin with the two shape keys created, and our active button is on the second keyframe, shape key. We can begin to animate this lattice. So what we want to do is just basically just highlight and move, and we can see the here moves with it, but we want the here to expand. So because we want the here to expand, like when the character stops moving and the water begins to spread the here to the side, we want to just go ahead and add a proportional editing, and we're going to use a smooth fall off. We're going to select somewhere about here, C, and we're going to use our middle mouse button to scroll up, and we're just going to scale out. So we want to just make sure that we highlight this and scale out, and this will cause the here to expand along the side. And the fall off means that the further away we move from the radius of the selection is the more that the affected vertices will move in, and it gives you the the type of fall off. It shows you how they will interact. If it was a sphere, the fall off would look more like a sphere, but we want it to look more like a smooth Bezier curve to give us this effect. Cool. So we press tab to come out of edit mode, and we can see that the hair is moving the way we want. Cool. Alright, so now we're in the animation section, which is the longest and perhaps the most complex section. In this section, we have everything that we started from the last section, except for the face has been layered out. So just to go through that quickly, if we select the face here, I have them in its layers for each piece: the hair piece, the facial features, the eyes, the mouth, and the ears, as well as the head itself. So we have them separated, and just like we had in the first section where I showed you the image, that's how I've separated them, so you can always reference that image if you want to know how those layers work. Okay, so I'm going to start with the animation of the arms. Good. And when we rotate it, we notice that the pivot point for the bone is a bit off. We want it to be in the center, so we're going to go ahead and do that right now. And I do it by creating an empty. Good. I have my empty here, but to create an empty, you hit Shift A and hit an empty. For this situation, I use plain axis because it's the most sensible. Alright, the cross here is the section where you want to. The cross here, or the X, or the cross that you see here, that is the area that, the center of that is the area where we want to put the cursor, and then we want to attach the pivot point to that cursor. So we're going to hit Shift and S, and we're going to go cursor to active, and so we have the cursor in the center of the empty, which also happens to be in the center pivot point that we want for the arm. And then we're going to go to object, set origin to 3D cursor with the bone selected. Good. That way now when we rotate the bone, we see that the bone rotates along the correct pivot. Cool. And we're going to do the same for this over here as well. Let's put it here, and then we're going to hit Shift and S, cursor to active, and then we're going to select this bone here, go to object, set origin to 3D cursor. Oopsie, what happened there? Like I pressed this, I moved it back by accident. Let me just bring this back up. Let's go again, Shift S, cursor to active, object, set origin with the bone selected, object, set origin to 3D cursor. And then now if we rotate the bone, see the bone's rotating across the appropriate area. Now because we've set the origin in such a good place, we won't have to do much with the armpits to change for the lattice, but there are sometimes you'll find yourself in a position where where you have to do a bit of lattice editing to make sure that the arm looks natural from the bottom, but here it looks okay, so you won't have to add a lattice here for correctional work. This looks okay. My first demo didn't work out as well, so I had to do a bit of correction animation there, but when we reach there I'll talk about that. So now that we have the arms, let's go into animation. We're going to animate with eye, and we're going to make sure that we're in pose mode. So let's go ahead and select the bone that we want to be animated. We're going to move to frame 24. Good. And I'm going to rotate the hand up here. I've already done it for the left hand, so just showing you with the right. I'm going to make sure that they're roughly even. I'm going to hit I and R to set the rotation. And we see both hands are moving nicely. Cool. Then after that, you want the arms to move slightly up. ever so slightly, just a little bit up like here, and we're going to hit I and R again. Good. Then we're going to go to the object mode. We're going to select this bone here. We're going to go back to pose mode, and we're going to rise this one up a little bit too, to about here. IR. Oh, sorry, I did it on the same frame. So I'm gonna just copy these keyframes here and just Control Z to bring it back. Bring it back here. We want to move on to frame 32 before doing that. So let's move on to frame 32, and then just gonna go on to object mode and do the same for this hand here. Pose, R, lift this up about here, IR to set the keyframe at the bottom. So we have a sort of slow down at this point. Good. Between the two. Then we're going to move on to frame 40. And at frame 40, we want the hands to move up to the very top. So it's going to rotate to the very top here, about here. And we can see that some cracks in the rotation, and we'll fix that with the lattice. So I'm going to select this and make sure the bone selected, and hit I and R. And then we're going to move on to the other side of the hand here and go to pose mode. I and R. Now I know that you can mirror it, but for now we just want to go through it this way. So we have this in both object mode now. We can see what it looks like, and we can see a bit of cracks up here. So we can see that this section here for the armpit looks a bit strange. For this side of the arm it's not so bad, but for this side it looks a bit strange here. Can move it in a little bit. See how that looks? That works by moving in a little bit here. But we still want to kind of smoothen this out a bit, so we can use the lattice modifier to smooth that part out. Okay, so we have the arms animated, so pause and lift up. Cool. So we've done the base arm animation for the base arm. For the shoulder joint, we're going to go ahead and move to the forearm. So we're going to go back to the first keyframe, or the starting frames. That's one. And we want to set our keyframe for the forearm. So if hit I and R in pose mode, we can select both bones, I think, at the same time. Go to pose mode. I'm going to select this and this. Let's hit I and R. Good. Then we're going to go ahead and navigate to frame 24. And we're going to select this bone here and just have it bend slightly, like so. And I'm going to have this bone here and have it bend slightly, like so. Good. Now the bend is kind of harsh, so we're going to add some sections to the bones so that the bend isn't quite as harsh. Cool. And we can see that we add some segments here, kind of reduces the bend of the bone, or the harshness of the bone. Just pause this. Okay, but it gives us this kind of weird warp. So what we want to do is add more sections to smoothen this out. Let's add more sections to smoothen this out. And we're going to do the same here, add some sections and add some sections here. So if you look at the animation for both of these, that's IR, make sure that we set it for both, IR. We can see that we have a sort of flow here. Good, this looks okay. Good, and then we want the bend to even itself out at around frame 40. In fact, we're going to put it around frame 45 so that we have a stagger. Let's go ahead and just rotate it back out to the opposite side. So flat, open. I think the arms are supposed to go a bit higher. Let me just double check and see. Yeah, the arms are supposed to go a lot higher than this. No? I think so. And we're just going to go ahead and just rotate this now. So we have around like this. So we have it rotated back towards the head. Good, and then we're just going to hit IR for both of them. Round frame 44. So jump. Good. Yeah, this looks good. And then we want the hands now to be the last things that we animate. So the hands are going to start off in the position they are. So we're going to hit I and R. Then we're going to go ahead to frame 32. And we're going to have them bend inwards, like so. IR, IR. So we have a bend here. Good. And then as it reaches out to about frame 48, we want the hands to bend in towards the head. And this gives us the indication of drag. So the drag of the water on the hands is more pronounced than that on the shoulders, and so we get a kind of follow through that makes the animation look more natural. I'm going to hit I and R for this, and IR. Good. And so we have our hands moving up. Awesome. And then after that, we want the hands to come down. So we're just going to have a coming down animation at around, that starts at around frame 60. So move to frame 60. I'm going to have the arms prepare to come down. That's IR. Go up, have the arms prepare to come down now. And at around frame maybe 68, I'm gonna have the arms come down with a bit of force. So I'm gonna have rotate this R and have the arms come down to the side. We know where we want the arms to go to. That's gonna be this first keyframe, so we want it to go back to that same position. So we're gonna duplicate this and move this to frame 68. So it should come down. Just take a look. May want to give it a couple more frames. Seems to come down a little fast. So straight up and come down. Yeah. I'm gonna do the same for this one. I'm going to just copy these starting keyframes, move it over to the same keyframe that we're on. Let's have it come down. I think that's about right. Just give it a bit more space. Good. And then we're gonna start working on the forearm animation now, so that we can go through the same follow through. And we're gonna hit I and R to both of them. Good. And around frame 71, we're gonna have them rotate to the original position. So we're gonna copy the first position, paste it, copy the first position, duplicate with Shift and D and paste it. Up, come down, and the hands are going to be the last to follow through. So at around here, frame 65, I'm just going to select the two hands in pose mode, hit I and R to set the rotation keyframe, and we're just going to come down to about frame 75, and then we're going to set the hands back to their resting position. So up and come down. Good. Okay, they take a bit long. Let's see if we can bring it in a bit. Up and come down. Yeah, I think I like the way this is looking, and that is our upstroke to downstroke for the hand. And we're going to follow a similar pattern to the arms. Only thing is that we want to make sure that our bones are, this is perhaps worth noting, that the position of the end point of the bone in edit mode here will be the orientation point for this bone. So when we go into pose mode to rotate it, we can see that the center of orientation, or the rotation section, is around this point here, this top bubble of the bone. So you want to make sure the bone is placed in such a place that you get the best orientation you can in edit mode. So you may have to go back and do a bit of editing to make sure that you get the correct orientation. There are other ways to skin this cat, but this is just something that you'll want to take into consideration, because the better that you have this bone, the better the orientation for the bone is, the less work you have to do to correct the animation flaws. Alright, so let's get into the animation now. We're going to select both bones on both sides, object, at the same time. Then we're going to go to pose mode. We're going to hit I and R, rotation. Then we're going to go over to frame 45. Good. And we want to select one of the bones and just rotate it to the top, to about here. And we're going to rotate the other bone to about here, so it's about equal. I'm going to select both of them and hit I and R. And when you're hitting I and R, make sure that your cursor is in the window section. If it's down here, it won't give you the results that you're looking for. Cool. After that, we want to just navigate to about frame 48. Good. And we're going to have the legs go up slightly after that frame, ever so slightly. Oh no, we're just going to duplicate the frames here, sorry, so that there's a space, and then we're going to have it go up at around frame 56 or 54. So you're going to lift this up, frame about here, and let's lift this up about here too. And we're just going to hit I and R. Oop. Make sure that both of them are moving up. Let me just duplicate the keyframes down here so that we have equal. Good, so scale up and up. Cool. And then what we're going to do now is that we're going to focus on the upper parts of the leg as well. So we're going to focus on we're going to focus on the calf muscle here. So let's go ahead and just add a keyframe. Hit I and R. Good. We're going to navigate over to the frame 48. And then we're going to bend this over. About here. If you're getting a bit of artifacting, don't worry, we can, like this, we can fix this in correction. And we're going to bend it to about this point here. IR. I'm going to do the same for this. Bend it to about this point. IR. So let's just make sure that we've done this for both of them. Okay, I didn't set the first keyframe here. IR, and then they should just leap up here. Cool. IR right here. Alright, for the next step, we're going to do the feet. So let's go ahead and set the rotation keyframe for both of them. IR. Let's go over to the 45th frame. Good. I'm going to have the feet kind of curve in. So they're going to bend in towards the body here. IR. IR. Cool. So it just bends in, forming this kind of pincer look. Cool. And then on the frame 54, we want these frames to be out a bit more. And we want the calf muscles to be out a bit more here. So I'm just going to say I and R. So if we play it, good. And then they're going to snap down at about frame 60. Or a little bit earlier. Good, so we're going to have the snap down. So first, with the snap, we want to look at the phi, and the phi is going to come down. So bring it down about here. Oh, we're going to just bring it down to the base, sorry, at around frame 65. And just going to duplicate the first state, bring it down to like here. But while it's coming down, we're going to have different behavior for the thigh muscles here. For the calf muscles, sorry, or the calf bone. Have these selected. And unlock them. Good, so these are going to move outwards before they move in. So about here, we're going to have these move out. Because we have the legs making a kind of circular motion. So in the follow through, we're going to have the legs kind of make a circle and come around. IR. Good. That way the snap feels like you're trying to gather as much water on the in between the thighs and the calves as possible before you do the end snap, which thrusts all that water that you've gathered underneath you to propel you upwards. Good. At that point, the thighs will return to the original position. Good. So we just duplicate the starting position, and all we need now is for the feet to follow through. Good. So for the feet to follow through, I'm going to move on to it. At this stage, when the water is being gathered underneath between the thighs, the feet are going to stretch out away from the individual. So what we're going to have to do, we're going to rotate them out to about here. IR. Good. I'm going to do the same for this one here. Rotate it out. IR. So increasing the surface area of the feet to get as much water as possible between the thighs, and then it's going to snapshot to the original position, but we're going to stagger it a little bit so that it's not ending the same time that the thighs end. Good. So if we select two of them, it's a bit far off. Let's see if we can bring it in closer. Right. And this looks about right for the swim. Good. In fact, we can even reduce some of the space in between, but I think this is good for now. Good. So we can move on into the animation of the hair now. So what happens is that as the individual is gathering water, the water underneath the person is kind of fixed within the pool, and the water energy that came from the initial thrust comes underneath the head, and it causes the hair to expand outwards, which is why we have this keyframe here for the hair that we did for the lattice. So if we select this lattice here and we go to the shape keys for the lattice, we can now use this opportunity to have the hair expand. So at this point, she's done the thrust and she's gathering water. So this is where the hair would begin to start to expand to about here, 40. Hair would expand. You can even have it expand for a staggered amount. Good. So you can have the hair expand, and then it will snap back with the snapping of the hands. So the force of the drag will cause the hair to shrink again. So if we hide this lattice, we can actually see the effect of it. Good. So the thrust will cause the hair to reduce, the expansion of the hair to just reduce with the water resistance that's hitting the hair. Cool. Awesome. All right, now we're going to look at the face in terms of creating this rotation effect, right? So the face is going up and down during the process. All right, so first we want to go to edit mode. We want to select the select mode, and then we want to select the ears. I'm going to go over to the first frame. Good. And what we noticed in the animation that we had before is that at this point the face is up, because as she thrusts down, she extends her head up, and the whole of her face tilts upwards. in the direction, tilts upwards in the direction of the thrust. So what we're doing here is we're going to have the face move up, basically all the facial features. So we're going to just move this up. We'll have a keyframe. Oh, we're going to keyframe the transformation of the layers, and we can't transform individual layers, or we can't transform individual components in the grease pencil without having them in layers. So we have the facial features here, which is the eyebrows. I'm going to do that first. And if we go to the data in grease pencil, go to layers and open up the transform section here, we have the option of transforming these individual layers. So what we want to do is transform the Z. It doesn't use the default canvas of the I've set up. It doesn't use the canvas orientation that I've set up. It uses the default Blender canvas orientation. So Z is up and down. So you want to keep that in mind. We're going to insert a keyframe for Z, and we want at this point for the eyes to be up. About here is good. We can lift up a little bit more. Can we go a bit more? Yeah, I think we can go here. Placing a keyframe. Good. And we want the eyes also to be up. Let's select the eye layer on my right, and then just increase the Z section here. At this point the eyes are also closed. We're gonna close the eyes in a second, but first let's just move everything up to where it needs to be. Let's select the mouth and lift it up. At this point, insert keyframe. Cool. And what we want now is that as she's preparing to make the swim, to make the thrust, you want the expressions to come down. So the eyes will come down, the mouth will come down, sorry. So keyframe, the facial features will also come down. And the eyes will also come down. We're gonna have to do a lot more to the eyes, but for now, let's just have it here. So keyframe. Cool. So make sure that we have keyframes for all of these. For the Z location. And we see that we have an up and down motion. It's looking okay. And now we're gonna animate the ears now. So at this point, the ears are gonna go up. So they have a keyframe here, and they're gonna go up in the opposite direction of the face generally. I'm gonna hit I and R. Oh, not I and R. Sorry, we're gonna replace the Z-axis transformation. All right, we have to make sure that we have ear selected. So let's insert a keyframe here again. Insert one here, and we're just going to have the ears come down at this point, about here, and this will give the illusion of rotation. Bring it up. Keyframe, right. You can't use G and Z to move them. It won't register in the transformation here. That's what the error, that's the problem that you saw me doing right there. So the regular shortcuts you would use to move these things, you can't do it. You have to move the numbers here and animate from this portion. So by moving the ears down and the facial features up, we have the illusion of a rotation. Right. And then what we want to do now is that we want the hair piece to follow this rotation, the same rotation path. So as right here it's okay, but we want it to expand when it comes down. to this point. And to do that, we could scale, but scale is a bit finicky. So we're gonna use a lattice for this situation. All right, so we've done some corrective animation for the shoulders here, for the armpits here. So as the arms go up, you can see we have a better result here because of the lattice and the keyframes. If we take out the keyframes, we can see the difference here. Good, so it's the same that we did the lattice for the here, but we use the shape keys and the lattice to move this up so that the armpits look a bit more appealing. And we're going to do the same for down here, so it covers the leg area. Cool. So we just have it go up and go down. But the next step after this is to look at the, let's go ahead and just hide the lattice here, is to look at the here piece. We also did the same for the here piece as well, add the lattice to it. So if we just show you the lattice here, same principle, just hide this one here so that we can easily see it. At the here, same principle for the lattice, we just have it expand. So the same process, and this is less corrective, but this helps in the rotation effect, because we see that the hair piece comes down with the rotation of the head. So what we want to do now is have the head go up as the stroke comes down. So head crunches down as the stroke goes up, and as it's coming down now, good, starting at around frame 60, you want the head to go up. So for that, we just need to select the entire head. This is on grease pencil object, and hit location, keyframe location, and we want, as it goes down, it heads up. So GY, and just move along the y-axis to about here, IL. So we have the head go up. Good. And what we want to have is the hair parented to this head. So as it goes up, keep transformation, we parent with Control and P, the hair goes up as well. So it comes down and goes up. Good. So what we want is all of these facial features now to mimic what it was at the start here. So we basically just have to duplicate them for the facial features and move it to the side. See what we get. Good. The only thing is that we want the facial features to persist just as we take the shot up. Good. So we can even stagger this a bit more. So that we get a better effect here. Yeah, I like this effect here. So head goes up. Okay, so there's some couple of things that we have to do here now. So first up, I want to move this shadow up a bit underneath the neck to be slightly higher. Good. And we want the mouth to be more open, so she's taking a deep breath in case water gets into her mouth, and then her mouth closes as she exhales out, as she makes the thrust to go up. So we want the mouth to increase in size. Now the problem with transformation inside of Grease Pencil itself is that the origin point, you can't set individual origin points for each Grease Pencil object. Each Grease Pencil layer, at least not as I know it. So because it's a global origin point, you're gonna have to play about with the transformation position as well as the scale to move it back to the correct place. So if we scale along the Z for the mouth, let's go to the layers and go to mouth, make sure mouth selected, go to transform. So if we scale along the Z, we notice that the mouth is moving up and down And the reason is that the origin of rotation for the grease pencil object is not in the center of the mouth, so we get a translation. Right, this is unwanted. Right, see as we scale it up, we see the translation. This is unwanted, so what we need to do is just to move it back into the position that we want it to go in. Good. For the X it's not bad, but for the Z it is. So we have to move it back down along the Z axis to the correct position, which should be here. So that's the best thing to do here. Let's insert keyframe, and then return it back to 1 and return this to 0, or where it was in the beginning. Place single keyframe, insert single keyframe, insert single keyframe, so that we see that the mouth opens with the face. Right, and then we want the mouth to return to its original position at the end. So down and up. Cool. Let's just go ahead and add some keyframes to the mouth. See that the mouth is making a bit of a transformation here. We just want to see that the location remains the same. Z location. Yep. Cool. This looks about right. Okay, we're going to move on to the eyes now. So the eyes close shut. It's the same principle to the mouth, so I won't go too much into the explanation. We just want it shut at set point about here, and we want it open here. So with them selected and we're on the eyes selected here, we're going to go to transformation, and we want at this transformation the eyes to be here and open. This is correct. As it goes up, we want the eyes to be shut, so we're going to just add scale keyframes here along the Z and X, and we're going to add scale keyframes along the Z and X. We want it to go to basically 0 if possible, or maybe 0 point something, so that we can actually see what's happening. Let me just bring this up again. Let's go down about here, 0.4. Let's move it up a bit. And see if we can just bring it up. So we have to kind of mess around with this till we get what we're looking for. And it's going to be about here. Opens up. So for the eyes, we want these sections here. So keyframe. Good. We want this to be duplicated and brought to the front, and we want these two to be here as well, and that should open and close the eyes. Let me see, go again. Okay, we're getting an undesirable result. Let's just see what's happening here. Eyes are coming up at 0. Oh, I didn't bring over the eye location. Okay, something's missing here. Eye location. be like this. Okay, so the problem is with these keyframes here. Let's bring this back over. Okay, yeah, so it has the eyes open and close. Cool. So that makes for the entire animation for the swim. So now for the next step, we're going to move on to some corrective animation, and we're also going to move on to the animation of the pool itself. Okay, now that we have the main animation down, we're going to animate the pool itself as well as do a bit of corrective animation as well. So the corrective animation, we've done some for up here already. Good. We can see the extension here. We're going to do the same for the bottom here for the VV area, the vagina area, or the area where the swimsuit covers the legs. Alright, however you want to term it, and we want it to expand so it covers this area at the bottom that's not being covered. Right, so what we need to do here is go to this part of it, and we want to go to edit mode, making sure the grease pencil object is selected. We want to make sure we're in the select points only, so only vertices. Then we're going to use B, the B box tool, and we want to highlight this area at the bottom. Try not to highlight too much of the top. We're going to go to our data, and then we're going to go to vertex group. I'm going to add a new group. I'm going to call this group VV. Good. And we're just going to assign the selected points, just like we did for the hair and like we did for the armpits. As we can see, we have the armpit group here. It's just that we didn't show this on camera, but it's the same process for the hair. And then we're going to go over to the modifiers. We're going to add another lattice modifier, and the object is going to be a lattice. We have not done the lattice yet, but we know the vertex group is called VV. We're just going to go to lattice here and bring it down. GZ, bring it to the front. GX, bring it to the side. Good, and we're just going to squash it along the Y here. GY, and squash it along the Z as well. Good. And scale it a bit, make sure it covers the whole area that you want it to cover. And then we're just going to break this down into, we're going to subdivide it or add resolution, so to speak, so that we get more topology to work with as we're doing the shape keys. I'm going to add shape keys here, and I'm going to go to press Z to go to wireframe so I can see what I'm selecting a bit better. I'm going to select these down here, press Z to go back to material view, and we're going to just play about with bringing this down. I will turn on proportional editing, and we're going to bring it down a bit to like here. Let's just decrease the radius of the C here. Let's go again. Just use the middle mouse button to decrease the radius. I know we're not seeing much of an edit right now, but we'll see the edit once we go into our modifiers and change this object to the 9. Cool. And make sure that we can select and deselect it. Yeah, just fine. So if we modify the shape key now, we see that we get the area coming down the way we want it to. Good, and it's a bit stretched at the top, so we want to kind of bring this down too. So we can bring this down a bit. Good. I may just take off proportional editing here just for a bit, see if we can get a better result. Press Z, go to wireframe, and see if we can just select the vertices and get a better result. So you're really going to be just playing about with this until you get the result that you want from it. Press Z, go to material. Yeah, this doesn't look too bad. Cool. So as it stretches out, and even in general, you could even leave it like this. You probably don't even have to animate, take it back to the original, but this is about right. Yeah, you could even keep it like this and this would be just fine. And that's us correcting some animation problems here. Good. And then we have the animation problem of this, where we have this section, this part here where the turnover here, or the crease here, is creating an issue where the grease pencil finds it difficult to calculate the area for which the fill should be in. And to correct an issue like this, there's a couple of options. I'm going to go to the frame where it first occurs, and we're just going to go ahead and go to dope sheet, go to grease pencil, and we're going to duplicate this area here. Good. And with that duplication of this area, I'm just going to change the vertices a bit to hopefully just reduce the occurrence of this. Because they're under the influence of the bone though, this is a bit finicky, difficult to work with, but we can take our time with it. Try to reduce the likelihood of these lines crossing each other. Good. And then we can come to something like here, add another key. Around here, and see if we can do it once more. Cool. And then just bring these together. See if we can help to eradicate some of these problems. Have it here. Okay, so we're basically just adding some frame keys here. Grease pencil frame key benefits here, to try to manually fix these areas frame by frame, so that we don't have these artifacts as obvious. We'd have to spend a bit more time, but we can also do it for this as well. There's a section here where it happens here too, and we're just duplicating frames where we see it happen, and then try to move these frames around so as to mitigate the influence of it. Let's select you, try to lift it up, and that helps to get rid of it. Right, so we see that we don't have it anymore on both sides. Good, and there's a lot more that we could do to correct some of these problems, but this is the corrective animation section finished. And we're going to move on to the pool animation, which is the last section for this. Okay, now we've done the corrective animation, or the corrective animation process in Grease Pencil. We're going to take a look at the animating of the pool itself, along with the upstroke and the downstroke. So what we want to do is first parent all of these bones, parent the bones to the torso transformation, and you want to parent the head to the torso as well. Good. That way when we move the torso, everything moves with it. We want this in the middle, about here. Okay, we also want to make sure that the lattice, so we're going to open up the lattice area now, that the lattices also are parented to the torso so that they follow too. So if we move the torso, the lattice moves as well. Cool. Let's just take out the lattice, and you can see it here. And we should have, I think we have a thing for the bones as well. No? So we're going to put the bones in a different area too, so that we can see the animation rig in by itself without any sort of impedance. I'm going to call it bones. Press M to move it. Just select all the bones and press M, and then we're going to select a collection and we just give it a name. So now that if we look for bones now, we can just hide the whole of the bones at once, and we can also hide all of the lattice at once, so we can get a good view of our animation. Cool. Yeah, I feel like this should be animated even slightly because of all the leg movement. So let me just bring up the lattice and animate it, even if it's slightly animated. Good, so we just have insert keyframe. As it reaches like 50, let's have it come down a bit. And then as it comes down, let's have it zoom in a bit to back where it was in the beginning, which was what? This. Cool. Around 65. Bring it back to the original. Cool. So we have a bit of movement here. Yeah, that feels better. Alright, cool. So we're going to animate the pool now. So essentially what we want to do is that we want to make sure that these are parented, all of the pool operations here are parented to the camera. So where the camera moves, we want all of this to move as well, except for the swimming pool lines and the blue lines here. So the background, which is the vignette, and the blue below it, need to all be parented to the camera, because we're going to animate the camera for this. So what we want to do is that the camera must remain stationary up until about frame 50. So just add a keyframe to this camera. We want it to move along the y-axis, and then as it kicks and comes down, we want to have the camera thrust upwards. So we're just going to have the camera go up like this. So good, so it moves with the thrust. So the only thing now is to have the body parented to the camera, so that it appears that the camera is actually following the person as they move with the water thrust, or would move with the thrust of their hands. So we're just going to select the torso. We have everything parented to, and parent that to the camera, so it moves with the thrust. In fact, we're finding that the camera's moving a little bit too early, so I'm going to move it down a bit. Yeah. Yeah. I think this is about it. And then we're just going to move the torso up a bit. Yeah. Until we get the look that we're going for. And that's essentially the swim animation. If we take off the Lattice SC tool, yeah, and this is the swim animation that goes with the pool animation. In general, it's a lot of animative work, even though it looks simple, and it has quite a bit of process to it. But the assets that you use, like the lattice and the bones and the shape keys, are pretty consistent throughout, and there's lots of options in Grease Pencil to allow you to fix errors that are that present themselves in the rigging process, as errors typically do. You know, that will give you the option to make the animation look a lot more natural. Alright, it's a long tutorial, but it's necessary. We'll go through bones again, and it won't be this long, but at least you have a decent sized tutorial to reference all of the information here as a full tutorial. Even though we didn't cover Inkscape, and we didn't cover every single step that I felt was repetitive, I feel that there's enough information for you to pretty much do a rig if you need to, via swimming or any other rig in Grease Pencil, because you have the base tools down. Alright, until I see you again with another tutorial, get up and design a new door. Later.